It's a good time to be a Shantae fan. After languishing in relative obscurity for nearly a decade, the series has established itself as one of the premium offerings of the indie scene. Shantae Half Genie Hero Ultimate Edition does a great job holding up the series' high standards, while also keeping to some of its faults. Like the games before it, Shantae Half Genie Hero is a side-scrolling platformer with a heavy emphasis on environmental exploration. As the game progresses, players discover new abilities and power-ups which allow them to further explore the game's many environments. Unlike previous games in the series, I'd hesitate to call Half Genie Hero a Metroidvania for one simple reason: it's level-based. That's right, the game ditches the open, interconnected world of the 3 previous Shantae games for discrete, standalone stages. That said, it still presents itself as an action-adventure game, with plenty of cutscenes, NPCs, upgrades, and backtracking. Unfortunately, I don't think this gameplay structure works quite as well as it did with the continuous world design. The players are required several times throughout the game to backtrack and discover new areas and stages they've already cleared. The problem stems from the fact that each level's various segments have set start and end points. Instead of finding new shortcuts and routes and taking the shortest path available, the player has to traverse the same stages the same way multiple times, which, needless to say, gets a bit repetitive. Fortunately, this issue is somewhat mitigated as the game progresses and the player obtains new mobility power-ups which enable them to clear said stages faster. It also helps that the stage design is generally quite good. Ultimately, the level-based approach and Metroidvania elements both work well, but they do so despite each other. Speaking of Metroidvanias, throughout the game, Shantae can find new abilities and upgrades. With each new ability, players can further explore levels and scrounge for even more power-ups. Despite the issues with the stage-based layout, finding upgrades for Shantae is still a rewarding process. Like past games, exploration isn't the only means of increasing Shantae's abilities. Spells, armor, and attack upgrades can be purchased at shops found throughout the game. Fortunately, all of the items are well priced, meaning that everything can be bought by the end of the game with little to no grinding necessary. Unfortunately, there are a few issues with some of Shantae's abilities. First of all, her signature ability to transform tends to break the flow of gameplay. Many challenges require the player to stop, open the menu, and select a new transformation. This wouldn't be much of an issue if it weren't for one thing. Only 4 abilities are selectable at a time, with the menu automatically advancing to the next page after a set amount of time. This means selecting a late game transformation requires the player to sit and wait for the menu to proceed to the next set of options, which can get frustrating as the number of available transformations grows. On the topic of abilities, some of Shantae's moveset is underutilized. Many of her transformations are only needed for 1 or 2 puzzles before they're made obsolete by more well-rounded transformations, most notably the bat and spider transformations. In addition, there's absolutely no reason to use the back dodge other than looking cool right before you get hit in the face. Shantae's back dodge isn't the only thing in this game that looks cool. This game is a visual delight, featuring some of the best blending of 2D characters and 3D environments I've ever seen. In typical WayForward fashion, the animation is smooth, vibrant, and full of energy. This game isn't just a treat for the eyes, however. The music is equally fantastic. Jake Kaufman, also known for his work on the Mighty Switch Force series and Shovel Knight, returns to compose the soundtrack for Shantae Half Genie Hero and once again knocks it out of the park. I can and have listened to these tracks for hours on end. The only track that didn't really strike a chord with me is, ironically, the game's main theme, Dance Through the Danger. Unfortunately, my opinions of the story are mixed. Half Genie Hero's story begins with Shantae waking up in the middle of the night to the sound of a faint voice. She follows it to a cave where it tells her something terrible is about to happen and only she can stop it, after which she shrugs the whole thing off as a weird dream. After that, the plot fragments into a collection of short episodes, for lack of a better term, where Shantae hears about a problem, goes to investigate, fights a villain, and returns to town and repeat the process all over again. There is an overarching narrative loosely tying it all together, but it more or less stays in the background until the end of the game. As a result, the plot feels more like the first season of a Shantae cartoon series, please get on that WayForward, than a cohesive single adventure. That's not to say the writing is bad, however. On a granular level, it's quite good. The dialogue and character interactions are immensely entertaining and overflowing with humor and charm. In the end, Shantae Half Genie Hero isn't a long game. My playthrough only lasted 7.5 hours with a 98% completion rating. With that in mind, I'm not going to hold that against the game, as the length felt about right. The game also features the New Game Plus and a hard mode for some extra replay value. But that's not all. I'm reviewing the Ultimate Edition, which comes with all the extra DLC modes. The first bonus campaign is the Pirate Queen's Quest, wherein the player assumes the role of series villain Risky Boots. This expansion plays much like the base game, with the exception of Risky's moveset and level progression. Seeing as she's not a genie, Risky can't transform. She can, however, utilize a plethora of pirate gadgets, from a grappling hook to a cannon to even her hat. All of these abilities are mapped to buttons on the controller, leading to a greater sense of fluidity in the gameplay department. Unlike Shantae, Risky doesn't have to stop for half a second every time she needs to switch between abilities. As you can imagine, this greatly improves the pace, as well as enables the player to more easily combine their abilities in interesting ways. Also, unlike Shantae's campaign, the Pirate Queen's Quest allows players to tackle levels in any order, making the game feel less like an action-adventure game and more like an action platformer in the vein of Mega Man. All of this works together to quicken the pace of the game. That said, exploring stages in search of key items and optional power-ups is still a key component, requiring multiple trips through each stage. This streamlined approach comes at the cost of story, however. Unlike the Shantae campaign, Risky's campaign doesn't have much story or dialogue to speak of between levels. Moreover, the writing in general is just a bit lackluster. Risky's entire character boils down to trying to be the baddest villain. Despite what you might think, this doesn't lead to anything interesting, not even when facing off against the game's other villains. Though, I will admit, I like the fact that she can have a one-sided conversation with her Tinkerbats. The next expansion is the Friends to the End DLC, in which the player takes control of Shantae's friends, Bolo, Brytops, and the chick with the birds. Each character has his or her own special abilities that they can use to solve platforming challenges and in combat, and the player must switch between them to navigate each stage. This time around, the game presents levels in a linear fashion. Exploration is far less important, as powering up characters is done by collecting gems, not hidden collectibles. Overall, the gameplay in Friends to the End is up to par with the other two modes. Fully embracing the level-based gameplay structure feels natural, and each character's abilities are well utilized, not only individually but in conjunction as well. That said, the reduced focus on character upgrades makes this mode significantly more challenging, especially towards the end of the game. There isn't much to say in terms of this mode's story. The writing is somewhere between the main game and the Pirate Queen's Quest, with the main trio having plenty of opportunities to play off each other and the villains in humorous ways. Lastly are the three costume DLC modes: Ninja, Beach, and Switch. Full disclosure, I only spent about an hour with each of these modes. Each plays similarly to the Friends to the End mode in terms of both level and character progression, with the biggest difference being that Shantae is the only playable character. Ninja mode is a lot of fun and feels the most like a traditional action platformer. Shantae can swipe with a sword, throw kunai, and even teleport short distances, not to mention move faster than she could in the base game. Beach mode is probably my least favorite, which isn't to say it's bad. Shantae trades her transformations for a beast sprawl, which is more useful than it sounds, and the ability to float in a bubble to reach tall ledges. The main gimmick, however, is that Shantae needs to constantly find sunblock or water, or risk getting sunburn, which will quickly drain her health. It's not as bad as it sounds, as sunblock responds very quickly, meaning you can take a breather between waypoints and plan your next move. Lastly is Switch mode. It's basically just my Switch Force with less focus on puzzles and more focus on combat and platforming. My Switch Force is a good game. This is a good game. All three costume modes put very little effort into justifying the events of their respective adventures. I mean that as a compliment. The light-hearted, blasé tone works perfectly for a collection of non-canonical bonus modes, and works well with the self-aware, tongue-in-cheek humor the series is known for. I don't think it's accurate to say Shantae Half Genie Hero Ultimate Edition is a great game. It's several great games in one package. Between its great gameplay, charming aesthetics, and excessive amount of content, I'd say it earns its $30 asking price. Assuming you buy it digitally, that is. The physical version of the game costs an additional $10. $40 isn't unreasonable, but it isn't a bargain either. In the end, I like this game a lot, and would highly recommend it to fans of the Metroidvania genre, or even people who just like platformers with a lot of personality and humor.